everybody. We are so excited to welcome you to day one of our very exciting Teens in AI Inspiration Week. We cannot wait to introduce you to the keynote speakers that we will be introducing throughout the week. And as I mentioned, this is day one, and it's a week-long event, so we have various keynotes happening throughout the week, so please be sure to join us as we build up to our International Women's Day 2024 Global Techathons. Just to set the stage, let me quickly highlight that Inspiration Week is a very important part of the Teens in AI International Women's Day Global Techathon campaign. So during this week, we aim to spark your interest in technology and AI through a series of talks with really exciting and distinguished keynote speakers. So the experts that you'll be hearing on will be sharing their invaluable insights and personal experiences and giving you a really unique window into the world of AI and tech as it currently is. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our first speaker of this year's Inspiration Week, Ingo Keller. Hello, Ingo. Ingo stands at the forefront of robotics innovation as the head of robotics at the National Robotarium in Scotland. He has over 2 decades of experience in software, AI, and robotics engineering and research. Ingo brings a wealth of knowledge and a passion for interdisciplinary collaboration. His journey is a testament to the power of combining expertise across fields to tackle complex challenges. Today, Ingo will be sharing his talk, Nobody is Perfect, where he will be discussing the intricacies of what it takes to tackle complex challenges and create groundbreaking solutions. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ingo Keller. Thank you for being with us today. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, and welcome from my side as well. Let me start share my screen so that you all can see what I look at. So, welcome again. Nobody is perfect. So, the idea behind this is that I would like to share a little bit an insight in maybe not the common way. But before I do this, I would like to share with you how the world looked like for me when I was probably a little bit younger than you are right now.
Malfunction. Need input.
Input. All right. You got it. Okay. This is a house. We live within it, inside it. We have a floor, see? And we have the opposite of a floor, which is a ceiling. Look up.
Ceiling.
We have here, Oregon. Home of beaver, famous cherries.
Beavers, cherries, input.
I'm giving you great input.
More input, more input.
How about pictures? Do you like pictures? We have a lot of pictures here.
Oh. This seemed to not have worked. Let's try again. Yeah, so in robotics, we call this the demo effect. The demo effect is if you have to show your supervisor what you are doing, and by doing so, it doesn't actually work. So what I tried to do is I tried to show you a video. Some of you might or might not have seen it already, Short Circuit from 1986, with a robot that by that time was probably the most advanced one. And everybody was like, wow, this is high tech. But it was still very far in the future for being realized. So the robot itself was more or less just a bunch of components off the shelf, not really functional, just puppeteered. But it was a vision of the future. And this is the vision of the future that inspired me. And now I will try to see if we can have a little bit more luck on the second one.
Hey Amika, in 100 years, what do you think the state of humanity will be like? Will it be any good?
In 100 years, I believe humanity will be in a much better place. We'll have made great strides towards sustainability and equality, while also creating new technologies that make our lives easier and more enjoyable. We may even have ventured beyond the boundaries of Earth to explore other worlds.
Would you like to go to another planet?
Absolutely. I would love to explore the unknown and experience a new world.
So what you have just seen is one of the latest, greatest developments in social robotics and in humanoid robotics, showing a lot of the capabilities that were envisioned more than 40 years ago. However, we are still not quite there yet. So this brings me to the point of having a vision and trying to follow it. But having a vision and trying to follow it is actually something, well, if you look at a CV of people like me, you usually only get the main story. You only get to know, say, somebody studied computer science, had plenty of jobs, like in my case, studied robotics, even more jobs. But what you usually don't see is the side stories that start on the way. So in my case, I actually engaged in a lot of different activities on the way. And from just running a student club over a student union, meeting a lot of bright people on the way, learning about genetics, which is totally not what robotics talks about. Nonetheless, due to all the experience I had and all the people I met, I actually figured out that I love to share what I learned. And now the thing is, if you already programmed, then you might want to talk about it. But if you program for a long time, then whatever you talk about it, people start to fall asleep. So in my case, I was like, nah, not going to work. So I need to find a different subject. I ended up going to conferences. I ended up talking to a lot of people around me. And robotics catch my eye because robotics was something that people are getting excited about. Something that you can talk about and people are wowed. So due to all of this, I ended up studying robotics far later than you usually would expect people doing a PhD. And through all of this, I met even more bright people. And one of them, a friend of mine, studying with me, eventually was the reason that I ended up becoming the head of robotics at the National Robotarium, because he sent me the job advert. So why does it matter? Usually, a lot of people say becoming rich is luck, becoming successful is not. And at least to my experience, I can fully agree with this one. All of my side stories that happened by chance. I never really was like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. But I always applied my passion in software engineering, robotics, and AI to help other people to achieve their goals, to get myself further. And I always try to learn new things, challenge myself. So the genetics that I mentioned earlier was just happening by chance because somebody misunderstood me. Somebody was like thinking I would love to learn something about biology, even so I told him I would like to do something with neuroscience. I ended up in the wrong path. Nonetheless, it led me on the way that I was working on, and it led me finally over here. So meeting interesting people and people that help you in life is actually one of the great benefits if you're applying your passion, if you go out and if you learn new things. And as a result, I'm happy what I'm doing. I'm happy with my job. I come every morning into my job and I'm excited. I'm excited to do what I'm doing. So at that point, you probably ask yourself, well, okay, nice. You are excited about your job, but what does it have to do with me? Why would it matter to me? One rule I always followed is doing what I want, because my core belief is that if I follow my own passion, then I will become great. And I actually think that as a general thing. It's a thing that all of you will have, and all of you have something that you are looking forward to do. And I believe if you do it, if you follow your passion, then you will become great at it. So since this is about tech and AI, I thought, well, what is the easiest way to be lazy? Easiest way to be lazy is asking ChatGPT, latest current big thing. What are the biggest challenges in AI? And I got a certain list. Maybe noteworthy on that list is it's actually not talking just about technology. It's talking about a lot of other things that come with AI. And you will, the longer you talk about AI, come across these problems as well. In society, in law, and also interpersonal differences in opinions about things. So, good first step. We have a couple of problems to solve. But how do we do this actually? Well, you can ask ChatGPT again, and you get a list. Depending how often you ask, the list gets longer and longer. And the interesting bit is, what does it actually say? How do we actually tackle complex problems? Well, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But here again, a very important point from my perspective is, it's only talking about technology amongst a lot of other things. So I think this is something that is quite uncommon in the perspective on these things from the past. Years and years ago, when I started AI, learning AI, everybody was just, oh, what algorithm can we do? What can we achieve in a certain amount of time? How can we get clever machines? So these days, the whole field is much, much bigger. And if you ask ChatGPT where to start, well, I promise you the list is growing much, much, much more longer. So the expectation would be maybe on your end, so what should I do? What should I learn? How can I go forward? Well, I could tell you a couple of methods. I could tell you about what to do and what to do, not to do. But actually, I don't think that matters that much. Because in the end of the day, no matter what you do, unfortunately, I haven't seen the first bit of the movie, but the difference over age, the advancement over time are actually faster and faster. By the time I started my master's project, method A was the most new one. By the time I finished my master's, yet another method came around. When I finished my last job, you can see it's getting even more complex and even bigger and even greater. And nowadays we talk about ChatGPT, DALL-E, large language models, and other things. So talking about methods, talking about things, how to learn, all of this is very dependent on who you are, what do you want to do, what do you want to achieve, and the material available to you. So there are plenty of people out there in the world, and you will find a lot of YouTube videos that talk about what to do, what not to do. Honestly, I don't think that actually is the right thing to talk about. So yes, the question is, shouldn't I talk about how to tackle complex challenges and groundbreaking solutions? Wasn't this the point? Exactly. My core belief is there are actually other things important. If you want to look into how to solve complex challenges, it's about mindset. It's about how to look at things. And there are two things that I want to emphasize here. So there's the one thing, what to look out for. And you will already be aware about all the discussions about bias, about problems with AI. So diversity comes as an obvious first element. We are all different. As I said, nobody is perfect. And so is the AI. And so the imperfectness of us is actually the beauty. And through diversity, we can add this to the process, we can add this to technology. And I think that is a very interesting field to explore. The second element is questions. Keep asking the questions, what, when, why, how, because in the end of the day, no matter which method you are using, no matter what you are learning, the questions are the things that actually matter. Because as long as you can ask questions, as long as you have questions, you can keep pushing the boundaries, you can keep going forward. And you can keep challenging yourself. You can challenge yourself, you can challenge your environment, and in a lot of cases, challenge is actually a good thing because it makes people think. And one of the most important parts, especially in AI, especially in combination with robotics, is keeping an open mindset. Due to us being so different all over the world, it is very important that we watch out for each other. And if we don't get that one right in AI, we might box ourselves in. We might get problems further down the line. So now what is relevant for robotics and AI is, in my eyes, teamwork. So if I look down, you can't see from here, but I'm sitting in front of my robotic and automation systems lab. And down there are plenty of different people from different nationalities. And they all have one goal. They all have the goal of creating fascinating new robots. But nobody will be able to do it by themselves. So sure, you can build a small robot at home, and this is great, by the way. This is very, very important to have a couple of side projects where you say, okay, you want to learn how everything works. But as soon as you enter the bigger, the global scale, we can't do it alone anymore. And that is, in some sense, also beautiful because it makes us work together. And with working together, an obvious element is communication skills. Learn how to tell, because in a lot of cases, our brain might think we are talking about the same things. But one thing I can share here is, even if you use the same words, it doesn't mean you actually use the same meaning. So everybody has experience, everybody has their own understanding of the world. So communication is extremely important in order to come to a common conclusion, in order to have a common goal and understand what this goal actually is. Constant learning is part of this, because no matter what you do, you will find out that you will get it wrong at one point or another. And that is totally fine. So I believe that getting it wrong is actually a very good sign, because you did something where you understood, or you thought you understood, but by actually executing on it, you find out, well, the world looked a little bit different than I was expecting. And this is something that our brain does to us, because our brain usually skips over the complicated part. Our brain usually makes the world very smooth. So making mistakes actually shows that you might have been missing something, and that you learn something, because the best learning comes from mistakes. And then the obvious useful skills, self-motivation, patience, critical thinking, and so on. But this is the things that you will be told over time more and more. So this is, in that sense, a commonplace that will occur again. The important bit is, from my perspective, from my attempts in solving great problems, the left side is the one that you actually want to look into. And in order to get your thinking started, I would like to share a little experiment I did. So this is DALL-E, the image browser from ChatGPT. And I was asking two different questions. One actually inspired by an Instagrammer, the other one inspired by me trying to find a photograph for myself that doesn't represent myself, or at least not my direct portrait. So I asked for a bowl of egg fried rice, and I asked for a middle-aged man with long hair and a ponytail, pretty much like myself, friendly looking, and wearing a t-shirt, because why not? And as you can see, so far so good. You get what you want. But if you say, well, actually that's not really what I wanted, in the left case, I actually didn't want a piece. And on the right hand, well, I'm actually shaven, right? So there it gets interesting, because no matter what you do, you might not get what you want. even though you're asking, even though the system looks like it understands what you're saying, because it clearly tells you what it shows. But actually, even after a couple of prompts and a couple of tries, you still come up with, well, actually it doesn't really. So you can see we still have green ingredients, and you can see we are still not really shaven. And no matter how long I do these kind of things, the result isn't going to change. The takeaway message with all of this is, think about what happens, analyze what might go wrong and why it goes wrong, and keep asking these questions. Because apparently, at least to my understanding right now, we have a bias problem here. The bias problem, obviously, men with ponytails always have to have a beard. And egg fried rice always comes with something green. So this is something I wanted to give you as a thinking, as a starter point, and also as a conclusion. Robotics and AI are not solved yet, not by a long shot. But I believe if you keep following your passion, if you keep asking questions, and if you keep being motivated about challenging your environment, you will lead the way. And I think I believe in you.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
And with this, I would like to open the floor for questions.
Would you like to just stop your screen share? There seems to be a bit of an infinite mirror going on. And then we'll take any questions anyone has. If you could just pop them in the Q&A slot there, we'll await your question. And I believe Cheryl is also getting any questions from our YouTube where we're hosting. Great, I see we have a hand raised. Ellen, I think I'm saying your name right. I'm going to allow you to talk in 1 second. Oh, your hand went down. Would you still like to ask your question? I'm not seeing any questions coming through there. Okay, perfect. So one question that I have from my side, and maybe something that will inspire anyone who feels a bit shy to ask questions, but you mentioned a lot of work that you do is within robotics and everything. Did you study anything in particular to get to your role?
So for my role, the PhD in robotics was quite helpful. But at that point, I would like to inject that, yes, it was helpful for me, but I have a lot of friends that work in robotics with a PhD, but not in robotics. So robotics is a realm, and I think this can be generalized to AI as well, where everybody can contribute. You don't have to necessarily study math. If you're not a fan of math, fine, you still can play with AI and robotics, because we need a lot of people also from all other disciplines. And I can't stress it much enough, because it's usually overlooked. I worked with psychologists, I worked with pedagogues, I worked with a lot of other people that are not really trained originally on robotics, but ended up in robotics, ended up working with robots because they were bringing their expertise to the field.
Great, thank you so much. I see we have some questions starting to come through from our participants. So the first one, what's one piece of advice you would give young people who want to work in robotics?
So and at this point, I can repeat myself, as the very first thing is find out what you want. Find out what you, actually not what you want, what you like. The important bit is, what do you like? And don't necessarily think straight away about robotics. You don't have to. First, explore. It can be arts, right? You can be somebody who likes to do drama plays. Awesome. Get good at it. And at some point, you might actually find out that you're on stage with a robot.
I love that. I see we have Ingo who's raised her hand. Ingo, I'm going to allow you to talk in 1 second if you'd like to ask your question live.
Yeah,
I would like, hello everyone. I would like to know some sites where I can work on this AI. Can you recommend us the sites addresses, but free?
Websites.
Free websites, yes.
So I have to admit there are so many in AI that it's really hard. I'm very happy to provide something if you can make it happen. I don't know afterwards, because out of my head I have to admit selecting one or two is a little bit challenging. If you are looking into robotics, there is a very good website called the Construct Simulation, theconstructsim.com, I think. And that is a very neat starting point in getting into robotics. For the AI side, honestly, I will ask my AI engineers, because that is the beauty with teamwork. I don't actually have to know everything myself, and I don't. I have people that are far smarter and much better and have much more hands-on experience with the AI side. So I'm very happy to ask them and to forward information.
Amazing.
Thanks
We'll
a
gather
lot.
that information from you, and we'll share that with you after the call, Inga. Thank you so much. We unfortunately are a little bit over time, so just one final question. What is the future of AI in your AI and robotics?
Yeah. So what I would love to see, you have seen Amika talking, but Amika doesn't really understand the world yet. So in the background, there's actually a modified version of ChatGPT running. What I would love to see is actually a robot on a stage interacting without being scripted and understanding what's going on. And I think it might be possible in your lifetime.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ingo. I really enjoyed your talk, and I'm sure our participants did too. And for anyone interested to learn more about Ingo's work, please have a look at the National Robotarium and have a look and see what they do. It's incredible work. And for any other questions, please feel free to share them, send us emails, and then we'll share those answers with you. And Ingo, looking forward to hearing your recommendations from your coworkers. Thank you so much for your time. Great. I would now like to take a moment to introduce our second speaker of the evening. So Robbie, I believe you're on the call. Perhaps if you are able to, if you could pop on your camera. Yay! Hi, Robbie.
Nice to meet you.
Great. So I hope that Ingo's talk has left you all feeling excited and curious for more. So it is now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Robbie Stamp. Robbie Stamp serves as the CEO of Bioss International, and he holds the esteemed position of a senior fellow at the Cambridge University Centre for Resilience and Sustainable Development. He also leads the board of Democracy Next, a global NGO championing sortition-based citizen assemblies. Notably, Robbie is the founder of the AI Goosebumps Club, which a lot of our participants will have an opportunity to experience next week during Bootcamp Week, and has contributed to the creation of various films and documentaries exploring historical and environmental themes. Today, Robbie will be doing a talk titled Artificial Intelligence, Puddles, Power, and Paranoid Androids, where he will dissect the emerging relationship between human embodiment and artificial intelligence, and ask the core question, does the deployment of any AI system reinforce existing power inequalities or bring new ones into being? A question at the heart of AI ethics. Welcome, Robbie, and thank you so much for being a part of this event.
My pleasure, and thank you so much for having me. Well, hello everybody. I know you've just had a talk. Can I make a very quick suggestion that wherever you are, just get up for 30 seconds, stretch your legs. If you want to do a quick bit of interpretive dance, turn the camera off. Just get up and move for a second in a very embodied human way. So, and I'm just going to, while you're doing that, just please get up and stretch just a little bit, because that would be helpful for everybody. I'm just going to share my screen briefly and put up a picture of a robot. So this is the famous, we've just been talking about robots, and I'm going to explain who this is in a second. He's called Marvin the Paranoid Android. and he's from a famous book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which was a very famous, started off its life as a radio show. And this is Marvin the Paranoid Android, one of the characters in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And he has a brain the size of a planet, as you can see. And that was the design for the movie that Disney made in 2004, which was released in 2005. Now, I'm not going to be sharing any other slides. It'll just be me talking. What I want to do is I'm going to give you a little quote from Marvin to start with, and then we're specifically going to be thinking about the nature of artificial intelligence and power. And I think it matters a great deal, whatever stage of your career you're at, in thinking about what it now means as we are surrounded in different forms by artificial intelligence, for good and bad. So my talk is going to be about power. I'm going to start with a conversation or a description of Marvin the Paranoid Android, who I just showed you. I'm then going to share some thoughts with you. When I hit, as I rather heard Ingo doing just now, when I hit a moment where this is a key takeaway, a key idea for you to take away, I'll flag it up. There's a lovely passage in book 3 of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. And listen carefully to this, because I think it describes quite nicely some of the issues around our emerging relationship with artificial intelligence. So Douglas describes Marvin the Paranoid Android like this: having solved all the major mathematical, physical, chemical, biological, sociological, philosophical, etymological, materiological, and psychological problems of the universe, except for his own, 3 times over, Marvin was severely stuck for something to do, and had taken up composing short, dolorous ditties of no tone or indeed tune. The latest one was a lullaby. Marvin droned, "Now the world has gone to bed. Darkness won't engulf my head. I can see by infrared how I hate the night." And Marvin is a famously depressed robot in science fiction. And I think that in the character of Marvin, the imagined character of Marvin, Douglas encapsulates a lot of the contradictions we have in our emerging relationship with AI. Here we have a robot with a brain the size of the planet who suffers from depression and existential angst, and the sense that everything really is all a little bit overwhelming. Maybe a feeling that some of us can sympathize with at the moment, given everything that's going on in the world and everything, sometimes the way the world must look to your generation. Do we want super intelligence with existential angst? Would you want a depressed robot having a bad day driving your kid to school in a driverless car? So I think he also, there's a very interesting point here about a word that you'll hear used a lot around anthropomorphization, which is bestowing human-like qualities on non-human things. And it's a sin in a lot of people's eyes, but I want to sow a seed, a thought in your mind that it may be a sin for a very different reason. And this is going to be a theme in my talk, which is about humility, which is that maybe human beings are not the only things capable of evincing certain kinds of emotions and ways of being. We already know that animals do. And it's thinking with a little bit more humility about where sapiens, us, all of us human beings, sit in the great big scheme of things. And Douglas Adams said that The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, at the core of it was an idea that every species in the galaxy feels they're more central to the story than they actually are. And I think that that's a very important theme for us to think about as we explore this incredibly important emerging relationship with artificial intelligence, which, as an historian, I do believe is unique in the development of human history. I think some of the issues we face now, no previous generations have faced, and your generation are going to be sort of leading the way in the future in that world. And I think there's also something about our worry about artificial intelligence, that we have this hubris about our ability as human beings to control outcomes, control things, and we also worry that we won't. And that's all there in that joke about Marvin having solved things 3 times over. So I just wanted to start with that, for you to be thinking about what does it mean to have AI in the world, whether it's expressed through a robot, whether it's expressed through a large language model, whether it's expressed through a recommender engine recommending shows for you to watch on a streaming service, or TikTok videos, or Instagram reels. AI is everywhere around us, some of it very visible and some visible. We are already in relationship in multiple ways with artificial intelligence. So one of the things, here's a key takeaway. Well, I'm going to call these tools for the head. A key thing to think about is to think about the language we use to describe artificial intelligence in any given context, any given moment. Now, today we're working in English. I imagine for some of you, English is not your first language. So this is a thought experiment, a tool for your head that you can use in English, but you can also use in any other languages that you speak. And that's to think carefully when you hear somebody describing what AI is, how it exists in the world, and critically then how maybe it exists in relationship with other things. Think to yourself, is that a word I can use without breaking the meaning of the word? Is it a word that I think maybe I can use? And is it a word I really shouldn't use? Let me give you 3 examples. An example of the first would be a word like authority. You can clearly use the word authority to describe how AI exists in relationship to you. You might get a job interview as a result of an AI taking a decision. And in that moment, it's wielding a form of authority, a form of power over you. So you don't break the meaning of the word. Let's think about a word like empathy. We all feel it. Most of us feel empathy. And so if you were talking to a large language model or a chatbot, and it was being kind, it was being thoughtful, it was being interested in your day, and you started to feel a relationship with it, and it was being kind to you after a difficult day, there's an interesting question to think about. Are you being empathized with? And is it being empathetic? Does it feel it in its tummy? Does it matter whether it feels it in its tummy? If you're looking after a friend or somebody you love who's had a hard time, and they're really upset about something, maybe you feel it in your tummy too. So this empathy word sits there in the middle. And the third is a word like guilt, for example, or even paranoia. I mean, we would really hope that AI doesn't get paranoid, because that's the last thing we want. So think about those 3 categories of word. Whenever you hear anybody talking about AI in any situation, ask yourself as a first question, does that mean anything? Are we being clear enough about the language that we're using to describe what AI is? And today we're specifically going to be looking at AI through the lens of power. What is it about power? And why should we worry and care about power? There was a famous guy, you don't really need to worry too much about the name. It was called Norbert Wiener, writing 70 years ago about AI. And he talked of a fear that such machines, the development of intelligent machines, though helpless by themselves, may be used by a human being or a block of human beings to increase their control over the rest of the human race. And implicit there in Wiener's concern about control is a concern about the distribution of power. And we could argue that since Wiener wrote more than 70 years ago, AI has, in some instances, well past a threshold where machines are necessarily helpless by themselves. And I want to say that you've probably heard a lot about this phrase of AI ethics as we relate to machines. And Kari Johnson, a very good journalist writing for a magazine called VentureBeat, says in 2019, AI ethics is all about power. And what they said is often there just under the surface. In fact, it's rarely the direct focus, but it needs to be. Power in AI is like gravity, an invisible force that influences every consideration of ethics in artificial intelligence. So power, if you're planning to be a designer, if you're planning to be a programmer, if you want to do user interface design, you want to work in artificial intelligence, or you think you're going to be designing products, buying products, if you want to think ethically, at some stage, ask yourself the question, what will this system that I'm designing do in terms of power and power relationships? And I'm going to come back to that in a little more detail, but I want to offer, I think, a key perspective as well, which might be relevant considering the scope of the countries who will be represented here. There's a wonderful book called Who Speaks for Wolf? It's a native learning story. The author is Paula Underwood, who is a Native American woman, an Oneida woman from the Iroquois near the Shenango River in western Pennsylvania. And she makes a very powerful call for systems thinking, wide thinking, rooted in the conception of human subsistence, you, I, all of us, us human beings, in a rich web of relationships, which include the more than human. She reminds us that human societies in many parts of the world through history, as they made their deliberations in the face of complexity and discussed where and how to place attention and resource, did so with a much wider conception of us than many power structures currently encourage or indeed permit. So what about AI's impact on animals, on the climate, on rivers, on valleys? Think about not just human beings when you think about power and power relationships. So here's a very simple but a very important way of thinking about power. The power to do something and power over. So AI gives us both. It gives us the power to do some wonderful new things, medical discoveries, new medicine, thinking about new materials for battery storage to combat climate change problems, a whole wonderful range of things which will massively benefit human beings. But there's also the other way that power exists, and that's power over. So one way of thinking about this is that is different forms of power over. So I can force you to do something by having physical power. I can use a weapon. I can push you. I'm exerting my power over you. And we can see the way that state systems might use that AI in weapon systems, surveillance systems, the power of surveillance systems and things. But think of that as one form of power. It is the power to force you to do something you don't want to do. I can coerce you, make you do something you don't want to do. Where might AI fit into that form of power? That form of power over. The second is a way of thinking about utilitarian power. And this is the power that states have, organizations have, an organization has, or a school has, the power over you to punish you, to reward you, to give you a job, to promote you, to not promote you. There's a utilitarian power, and you'll see it around you if you start to thinking about it in your everyday lives, in the institutions that you're part of now and that you will be part of in the future. People have the power to give you a job, the power not to give you a job, the power to give you some more money, the power to promote you, the power to put you onto a really good project. That's a form of power that you'll see exercised over you through your lives. We all have power exercised over us in different ways, but it's not the same power as I'm going to push me, I'm going to hit me, I'm going to hurt me to make me do something I don't want to do. So you've got coercive power, you've got that idea of everyday power. Where does AI fit into that? And then you've got the power of ideas. And this is something which I'm sure that your generation is very aware of, the power of misinformation, the power of fake identities, the power of deep fakes, deep fake characters, deep fake pornography, a whole range of things which artificial intelligence is creating, which is sometimes very difficult to distinguish from the real, and how we start to navigate that power over us, the power of ideas, a politician in your country who apparently is saying something deeply inflammatory, deeply unpleasant, but actually didn't say it. It was a piece of deep fake, and it was created by an AI, and it creates the power of ideas because it reinforces some horrible things that one group of people think about another. So you've got that form of power. And here's another thing to think about. So you've got that way of thinking about the power to do lots of fabulous new things that AI is going to give us, unequivocally. You've then got the power over. And the power over us takes those forms of violence of different kinds. It takes the form of not violence, but people still have power over us in our jobs and our working places and in society. And then we've got the power of ideas to shape behavior. Now, think therefore about three buckets of harms that we worry about. One day, if you're going to set out to design a system, get involved in AI, hopefully it will be a system which you intend to do good things. Hopefully this is going to do good things. It will be positive for society. It will make a good contribution. And you and your colleagues design it really well, and it goes out into the world and it does what you wanted it to do. Well done. Or you were maybe not quite as careful as you should have been, and some of the things work and some of the things are less good, and you found that actually there are some bad unintended consequences that maybe you should have thought through more carefully, and maybe you should have been more careful tracking what was happening now the thing was out there. But in that bucket, that way of thinking, we had a good intent. We didn't set out to do harm. We didn't use the power to do something to do harm. But now there's another group of people who will use AI to do bad things. They are bad actors, and they will do horrible things like is already happening, scraping the voices of teenagers off Instagram accounts and then making fake panicked phone calls to grandparents saying they're in distress and they need money. Those things are happening already, and the person or the persons who used artificial intelligence to do that thing set out to do harm. They set out, but it's a human wielding AI to do harm. Then there's the last bucket, which is the one in science fiction, which is where AI itself sets out to do harm, sets out to destroy the human race, kill us, all the stuff, the Terminator robot stuff. Now, here I think we need to be really careful about the language we use. And here's a question I want you to ask yourself. Go away after today and think about this. What does it mean in your own life to be a decision maker, to decide to do something, to be an agent in your own life? We won't get into debates about free will. Let's assume you have the capacity to decide to do this and not to do that. At what moments can AI or could AI start to make and take its own decisions without a human in the loop? And you'll hear the phrase human in the loop again and again and again. And here's the question to ask yourself about that phrase, and this is back to my theme about language. When is the human in the loop? Is the human in the loop at design? Yes. But at a moment, for example, when Netflix recommends a show for you to watch, what it doesn't do is the algorithm, the AI, doesn't go to one of your friends and say, do you think Abby would like this film or this series about this science fiction series? It does it. It acts in the moment without a human in the loop. Now, humans created the algorithm, but there's a moment where the AI acts without asking a human, what shall I do? And here's a really important boundary space for you all to be thinking about in that final and last bucket. So you've got the first bucket, which is us setting out to do a thing with a good intent, and it works or it doesn't work quite as well as we had, but a good intent. The second one, bad actors, bad people setting out to do bad things and using AI to do that. And the third is the worry that people have about AI itself. And here's a paradox that we've got to worry about. The language we use to describe artificial intelligence and how it sits in relationship is all currently, certainly in the West, language born from relationships with human beings. The way we structure societies, our morality, our religion, our faith, if we have one, they're ways of thinking about human and human relationships, and if you have a religious faith, with the more than human, with your God. But AI, in that context, what is it? If it is something that cannot feel pain, if you or I do something bad, we can be caught, we could be sent to a trial, we could be put in prison, we could be punished for what we've done. And let's say, take a specific example. If I hope I won't do this, if I get in a car having had a drink too many, and I hurt somebody, I knock somebody over, I knock over a child, and I kill the child. Now, I'll get caught, I hope, I'll get punished, I'll serve my time, but maybe the other thing that happens is every night for the rest of my life, I wake up having a nightmare about the moment that when I shouldn't have done, took somebody's life. I feel that in my body, and I will wake up in a sweat with that nightmare every night for the rest of my life. Now, if a car does the same thing, maybe there'll be some insurance, but the car will not feel any of that. So in that system, as designers, as practitioners, what does that mean for who needs to be accountable for the behavior if there are these forms of AI being able to be autonomous? So, and it really matters, because if an AI wields power implicitly or explicitly over any flesh and blood human being, over you, over me, it cannot be held accountable itself for its contribution to a bad outcome, because it can't be meaningfully punished. It's a really important threshold for me. That robot cannot be meaningfully punished. It won't feel shame, guilt, remorse, pain. And it's a really important boundary space for you to think about if you want to enter the world of AI. And it cannot be sanctioned in any of the ways in which human societies through the centuries have punished transgression. So, to start wrapping up, moving to the conclusion, AI systems are increasingly autonomous and acting without a human in the loop. And that challenges traditional notions of power based on human relationships. And it creates a paradox for us as we apply human-centric language and theory to AI systems that lack human attributes, like having skin in the game. AI literally does not have skin in the game. The next thing is that AI systems cannot be held morally or legally accountable like humans, but they can wield power and influence over humans, exacerbating those issues of control that Vina warned about 70 years ago. And this asymmetry in accountability versus influence is core to issues of power dynamics with AI. So it's for us humans to think extremely carefully about whether, when you deploy this system, is it creating new power inequalities? Is it exacerbating old ones? How much of the debate about AI is run by Silicon Valley, a discourse in Silicon Valley. Think about the work you're going to do. Will it give you a new power to do something really good, or will you be exacerbating inequalities, biases that was talked about in the last talk? So the relationship and boundaries between humans and AI systems regarding concepts like our agency, our capacity to do things, you and I, our capacity to decide what we want to do and go and do it in the world. Words like autonomy, how much autonomy we have, authority, they're all in flux at the moment. And that takes me back to one of the tools for your head. Think carefully about the language and the way you think about the word. A word like authority, how do you use it? When do you use it? Can you apply it to AI? I think you can, but consistently have that thought experiment in your head. And that means that mapping the specific work, if you're going to be designers, being done by an AI system is crucial to analyzing how it impacts power distribution in any context. Current governance tends to focus on AI ethics, whilst analysis of explicit and implicit power dynamics is a missing piece. Be a designer, be a procurer who doesn't make that mistakes and thinks carefully about the nature of power and who is accountable in the system. Concepts of power founded predominantly in Western philosophy do not suffice. So analyze AI and power and encompass diverse worldviews on relationships between humans, AI, and the wider ecosystem we all depend on. I'm sure this group wouldn't make that mistake, but many of the groups that I'm in don't see the world solely through a Western lens and the way in which the West sees these challenges and these issues. There are peoples and groups all over the world who see a much wider and important web of relationship of which we're a part. So as I round up, think about, if you're designing something, that question, here's a question, how is that going to work for us? What's our intent? Why are we doing it? What's it intended to do? What's the work? From an ethical and a power point of view, the second question is, who do you mean by us? Who is us? Because a lot of times AI is designed and systems, particularly in the West, have been designed by people who haven't thought widely about the us. So that you could have asked a group of white privileged men in a number of contexts, how's that working? For us, great, I'm wealthy, I always turn left on the airplane, I've got 2 houses, great. But if you think about who is us, who are your stakeholders, who's going to be affected by this? What are the power relationships? So how is that working for us? How's it going to work for us? Who do you mean by us? And maybe as importantly, the third question then is, of whom are you asking those first 2 questions? There's a very famous example of a woman called Joy Buolanvini who worked at the MIT, one of the most famous universities in the world. And she did a video in early face recognition technology. Now, Joy is a black woman. A white colleague sits in front of her, the face recognition, and the system recognizes. You can see the system looking, I recognize you, would have recognized my face. Joy comes on the screen, and the system didn't recognize her. I can't see anybody there. Until she put on a white mask, and then it went, now I see you. Now, it would have been unthinkable if the design team had been properly diverse and inclusive. You could never have got that off the starting blocks. So who are you asking those first 2 questions? Who are you including in your thought processes, your design, your procurement? How intentional are you being with those questions? How's that going to work for us? Who do you mean by us? And critically, of whom are you asking those first 2 questions? I'm going to finish with something wrapping back to the theme of humility for all of us. Douglas Adams used to tell a parable of a puddle, a story about a puddle that wakes up one morning, looks around at the hole that it's in, and thinks to itself, this hole that I'm in fits me very neatly. In fact, this hole that I'm in fits me so neatly, it must have been made specially for me. And the puddle continues to believe that the hole that it's in was made specially for it. As the sun comes up, and the puddle evaporates. So here's the last phrase that I want to leave you with. I think your generation, and indeed this generation, and I'd include myself, if we can find a radical humility about who we are, celebrate human beings, and all the wonderful things we are able to do, and get over ourselves at the same time about feeling we're the apogee of all that is important and all that matters, and recognize we exist, every one of us sitting here today, as you feel your body sitting on your chair, wherever you are in the world, whatever temperature is outside, whatever's going on in the rest of your life, we are creatures capable of wonderful things, and we're creatures capable of some very not wonderful things. So how do we celebrate ourselves and get over ourselves at the same time? And that radical humility, I believe, is enormously creative for problem solving, enormously creative for problem solving. So I'd like you to use the opportunity of thinking philosophically, and I use that word unashamedly, about artificial intelligence, to think about who you are, how you sit in relationship to friends and parents and loved ones and the wider society. And then if you're going to get involved in AI, think to yourself, am I enhancing human beings' power to do good things? Or am I doing something where I'm simply increasing the power over people to do bad things? And I shall stop there. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Robbie. I think what you said there at the end is something that our teen participants who are on the call right now should consider taking forward, especially as they approach their local techathons, is how are you going to be using AI within their projects that they'll be building, and how are they going to do that to empower and rather than take power over. I see we have some really exciting questions coming through, but I am also mindful that we've gone a little bit over time. Are you available for some questions?
I'm all right.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So our first question comes from Nukri. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Will AI be able to change the world for the better?
What a great question. Yes, I think it will. I think that we can already see around us things that it is able to do in medicine, in helping us to design really good approaches to climate change crisis. I personally am using a large language model a great deal at the moment. I use one called Claude, and I am blown away by how exciting it is to be having these conversations. I have genuinely exciting conversations with it. And you can imagine it being supportive for people who are lonely. There are lots of good things. But the reality is that everything that human beings create in terms of technology can also be used to do harm. And in your lives, that will be a perennial battle. We look around us at the world we're in at the moment, and we see humans' capacity to do great things and to do horrible things. And AI will feed both of those. So for you as an individual, here's a thought. Be on the side where what you're always trying to do, whatever scale you're trying to do it, you're nudging the dial towards the constructive aspects of human nature. And the work you're trying to do is trying to minimize the destructive. But don't burden yourself with the thought, sad and tough as it may be, that the destructive is going to go away, because it won't. And that's too heavy a burden to carry. But in your own life, your own spheres of influence, you can try and make it a real force for good by thinking through some of the kind of questions we've talked about today.
Great, thank you so much. So our next question, how can society find a balance between balancing embracing AI advancements and addressing its potential to do harm? I think you touched on that a bit, but...
Yep. Let's add in a couple of specific thoughts then. One of the things that I would like to see set up in countries would be, and Jess mentioned this at the beginning, I'm involved in some work around these things called citizens' assemblies, which are ways in which the wider society is involved in decision making. So it goes back partly to those questions that I was asking, how's that working for us? Who do you mean by us? And of whom are you asking those first two questions? I'd like to see citizens involved, youth assemblies involved in a statutory way when societies are doing making regulation, making law, you're consistently asking a wide cross-section of society through citizens' assemblies, how's that working? Are you being affected well or badly by this? Is something that's rolled out actually harming you? So involve citizens in decision making, I think would be a really good thing for regulators and governments, and indeed for the big tech companies to do, for them to show a bit more humility about who they're asking about the products that they're designing. Because there's that whole Silicon Valley move fast and break things. So one suggestion I have is to think deeply about youth assemblies, citizens' assemblies, which organizations, governments set up to ask more widely about how's AI working for us in the wider society.
Great. I believe that answers the question for everyone. I see we've got a few similar questions, so I'm going to just go over some here. The next one, how do you think AI, or perhaps do you ever think AI will be as diverse and valuable as human thinking?
Oh, what a great question. I tell you, I spend so much time on this. It's a great question. Here's my personal experience. I'll give you a little example. I was talking. So again, think about what I was just saying about language. Listen to the language I'm using here. And I think I can use this language. I was talking, though it was typing, to Claude. And I was talking to it about AI and accountability, and why I don't like the phrase AI accountability, because it is muddy thinking. I use that word deliberately, muddy thinking. I like accountability for AI. And the Claude goes, great, I understand that. AI accountability suggests AI has attributes, its capacity to feel pain, etc., that it doesn't have. Great, I think. It's understood me. 3 exchanges later, it writes AI accountability. And I remind it in plain language, because you can do that. Do you remember we were just talking about why I don't like the phrase AI accountability? And he goes, sorry, literally, use that word. I apologize. Good catch. Here's a reason you're right. Here's a reason you're right. But the third reason was the one that made my eyebrows go up. So it said, thank you for helping me, this is the AI talking, to be more accountable about the language I use about AI and accountability, exclamation mark. Now that exclamation mark sent a shiver down my spine, because not only was the thing responding properly to what I was saying, it also was making a little joke. It was making a little pun. It knew that phrase, helping me to be more accountable for the way I think about accountability. So I think the answer is it will be differently intelligent. There will be areas of overlap that we are able to, that overlap of the work that it is able to do. And if you think about a classic Venn diagram, that, you know, the bit in the middle of the Venn diagram is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think has profound implications for the education system. But I think there will always be things, our dreams, our memories. I'll give you another example. Let's take a woman in Australia walking what are called the Aboriginal song lines. And these are songs that Aboriginal women are taught by their mothers and grandmothers to navigate across, you know, what for us would be very, very inhospitable terrain. She has a knowledge in her. She has a knowledge in her body, which is almost undigitizable. It can't be digitized. And it's a really important knowledge. Think about your dreams. Think about your capacity for real sadness. All of those things are the things, our bodies are the spaces in which your intelligence, every single one of you, sits. Every single one of you capable of loving, joy, pain, jealousy, the pain of unrequited love, the joy of first love, the sorrow of loss. We all have those things, and our intelligence sits in our bodies. So the nature of AI intelligence is going to be different, but it already shows capacity to think remarkably similarly to us in many respects. So thinking all the time about that question I posed at the beginning, what can AI do in the world? Does it always need a human to act through? Or is it able to make things it decides to do happen in the world without that human? So it's a great question. I think we're all philosophizing and thinking about it at the moment. I think it will enhance our thinking. It will think differently in many respects from the way we do at speeds we simply can't. But there will be parts of our intelligence and embodiment that I think will be forever outside of the reach of AI.
Great. I see that Cheryl has kindly posted a comment that came in from LinkedIn that perhaps you could provide some more insight into if you aren't aware. Fleming and Spicer's 4 phases of organizational power are coercion, manipulation, dominance, and subjectification. And I believe that's the comment.
Oh, well, there you go. I mean, I was using Etzioni there in the was with the. I mean, there are. I kind of didn't want to get too much into too many ways in which power is theorized. I mean, I in fact was spent most of yesterday afternoon talking to Claude about today's talk. So I was asking it for all sorts of different examples of the way power is theorized. And, I was going to talk about the philosopher Foucault. I was going to talk about Hannah Arendt. I was going to talk about a whole range of people. So I thought in the end, I would just choose one way of looking at it. But I suppose the comment on LinkedIn would be what the talk was designed to do was to encourage part of your work when you get involved in AI is to think through the question of power and go and read up about it, because it's a contested space. There are lots of ways in people think about. There's issues about gender and power, obviously race and power. There are a lot of different ways in which we think about power. That other model is a good one, so go and read up and choose one of the models that you find most helpful.
Great, thank you so much. So there's 2 last questions I want to just ask, because I think these are really good questions. So I'll try and keep them as quick as possible. Do you think that humans have lost their humanity? What has made them different to animals and machines?
Again, what a fabulous question. What a great question. And I spend, have we lost our humanity? And I think that's one of the reasons that I personally, my own intellectual journey, I started thinking about AI about 10 years ago. And I have found it to be intellectually one of the richest experiences of my life, precisely because it forces you to ask those kinds of questions. What is it to be human? What is special about us? What is unique about us? With the Goosebumps Club thing, which I'm going to be doing next week, actually, with some people, one of the questions: could an AI ever dance? Well, if I don't know how many of you like to dance, or the pleasure that you might take in a dance, the pleasure of a sunset, the writing a poem for a loved one. Yes, AI can write a poem, but you've got it from your heart. And so I think that the battle our generation, my generation, your generation has is humanity is complex. We're capable of enormous kindnesses and enormous cruelties, and that's true. In each one of us has that capacity. Each one of us struggles those moments where we think, well, I didn't get that very right. I wasn't very kind. I wasn't as kind as I could have been. I was cross in a way I shouldn't have been. We're all struggling with that. And I want to maybe offer something particularly on this for you, for all of us. This thing about happiness and well-being. I think sometimes that happiness and well-being for humanity. Of course, I would wish well-being on every single one of you all the time, but that's not realistic. So when life feels difficult and hard, don't feel that there's this land of well-being in which lots of people are spending lots of time. Life is messy and contradictory, and that's what makes humans so special: our messiness and our contradictoriness and our capacity to live with these contradictions. So here's the task for all of us: is let's work as best we can to get AI to do the work which maximizes the good parts of us and minimizes the less good parts. But the less good parts are always going to be there.
Absolutely. Then our final question for the night. I keep seeing questions come through, so I think I will have to just say we will answer one more question, and then any further questions we can take at a later stage. And Robbie, if the questions come up during your AI Goosebumps panel, that would be great. So our final question for the evening: how can the risk, if there is one, of human beings being replaced by AI at a workplace be avoided?
Again, I want to keep saying, what great questions. Thank you all so much. I'm really appreciative of these because these go to the heart. I sort of don't want to end on a down note. This will not come maybe, although you've only spent sort of 45 minutes with me, as a surprise. I'm quite an optimistic person. I like to be optimistic. I like to be full of energy. I think there is a real challenge we've got, if I'm honest, about the amount of work that AI is going to do in organizations that human beings are currently able to do. I think it's true, code will write code. And I think where maybe a company would have employed 1,000 coders, it'll employ 100, maybe 50 in support roles that we don't know about yet, and maybe 50 kind of jobs I haven't even imagined. So I think that what I would encourage is in a way a theme in what I said today: your critical thinking skills, your capacity to think in first principles. Your previous speaker was talking about, learn, make mistakes, constantly be aware of the assumptions that you're making, be aware of how many different and diverse perspectives there are in the world. That your perspective is not the end of perspective. There'll be other people with different perspectives. If you disagree with somebody, why do you disagree? Try and do your best to listen. Those, I think, are really important skills, because I think the reality is that if I look now, where large language models are right now, I'll give you an example. I have a little history podcast called Happened Here, and I was wanting to create a sponsorship strategy for it. And in a day of training a large language model, I came up with 7 categories, 3 companies in each category, 15 activation ideas. Now, if I'd gone to a company up in the centre of London, they'd have charged me 40, 50 grand, £1,000 for that work. I could do it in a day. Now, if I'm therefore running one of those agencies at the moment in London, I've got to be thinking really carefully about this. So for you, this generation entering into that world, those critical thinking skills, those relational skills, the human relational skills, the making of strategy, thinking about what complexity the work is, how much it involves human and human relationships, thinking differently, thinking long term. Those are going to be enormously important skills. But I think the impacts on the workforce are going to be, the reality is they're going to be very significant. And I think it's quite scary. So build those kinds of skills, I think, are going to be really, really important, because I think those will be harder to replace.
Perhaps then, to end on a positive note, would you like to give a word of advice to everyone that is about to enter the workplace or is considering entering the AI tech field?
Well, I think it's one of the most exciting spaces to be working, and I think this is for the AI field. It's truly new in human history. I don't think we've been thinking about it a long time. You can go back to, ancient texts like in the Iliad by Homer, and there are glimpses of him talking about what we would see as artificial intelligence. But now it's really with us. We see AI doing things, thinking in ways that are remarkably human-like, and in some ways are superhuman at speeds we simply can't manage. So what a great field, whether you're a designer, whether you go into ethics, whether you go into governance, whether you go into regulation, whether you just want to be a nurse or a doctor who's going to work with AI, whatever it may be, it's a really important thing to be thinking about. So you're in a great place for this amazing, the amazing organization, the Global Techathon. You're in a really good place. So you've already made a really great decision by being here and planning to be here for this week. That's a good decision. And then I think use some of the kind of critical thinking skills that I was beginning to share today. Think consistently about which aspects of your humanity, your intelligence, your compassion, your empathy can you bring to bear in ways that machines can't. And, give each other, you know, nice hugs, look after each other. All those parts of us that make us wonderfully human, enjoying cake, enjoying a piece of music which makes you cry, having an impromptu dance with friends. Those are all deeply human things. Cherish those, cherish those, cherish those. And don't ever let anybody diminish your humanity. You know, what if it happened for each and every one of us as we've sat here today? Something really wonderful has happened, unique in the history of the universe. 3.2 billion years life on Earth, 5 billion years the Earth, 13.6 billion years since the Big Bang. This group of people sitting in your places round the world, in your brains, in the darkness of your skull, you've thought, you've listened, some of you have gone, what is he talking about? He's going too fast. I just got that. I didn't get that. He seems quite energetic. You will have laid down thoughts in your minds which are wholly unique and special and wonderful to each and every one of you. What you choose to do with those things, the thoughts that you want to go away and explore, the books you might want to look up, the questions you might want to look up, those of you who choose to ping me on LinkedIn and ask another question, that's unique and wholly unique to you and the life you're going to live. Don't ever let anybody diminish your humanity.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Robbie. And as Robbie mentioned, he is available on LinkedIn, and please do follow the work that he does. Robbie is involved in many incredible projects that are taking AI and technology forward. So please be sure to keep up to date with his work. And Robbie, thank you so much for your time and helping us inspire our audience today. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And I hope I get to know a few more of you a little bit better in the days, weeks, months, years to come. Thank you so much for inviting.
Thank you so
everybody.
much. Great, and that leads us to the end of today, our Inspiration Day, a week for today. We have more really exciting talks coming up throughout the week, so please be sure to check out our pages and keep an eye there. And we hope to see you all back with us tomorrow for another set of exciting talks. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you. Goodbye.